So, for those who are watching the recording, just welcome to the study hall that we'll be hosting for COE768, which is our computer networks. Um, and please do let me know if anyone has any questions, and let's get started. So, as per the prof's lecture from last week, we were given some content as to what information or what we'll be expecting on the final. This includes all of the things that have check marks. That's all the things that we'll be including within the study hall. Uh, and we have sorry, we have some formulas as well that will be provided on the final for the error control protocols for stop and wait and sliding window. And aside from that, just some things that we won't be getting into, as there haven't been any questions that I was able to find, were for DNS and for TCP headers. This is more for like self-study, theory knowledge, and going through the professor's slides. And once again, if you have any questions about those, you can ask, and I would try my best to help you out. Um, and lastly, there's like a list of some common IEEE conventions that we should be aware of. There's the 802.3 for Ethernet, .11 for Wi-Fi, .1Q for VLAN tagging. I feel like this was kind of specified in the lecture notes for a reason. So maybe if we're asked that, it's good to know. And then for STP and port-based authentication, also provided. So once again, ask questions. So don't be shy. You guys are here to learn, and let's get started with actually one more slide of information. Throughout the lecture, if we refer to anything with these specific terms of classes, it's good to know what each class refers to. Each class refers to here basically what um, range of IP addresses you can be or you are looking at if you're within that class. So this includes class A would be from 0 to 127.255s, and the respective subnet masks are also here. So the document or this document that I'm going to be working on is also provided in the chat. Uh, so if you would like to refer back to it, you can use that too. And just a little list of special ranges that we might be asked as well. There's something called localhost, which is specified to your system that you're working on, and the entire 127 range is a part of this address. So the next one is called a loopback address. So this one is similar to what the local host is a part of, but it's specifically your host that is on by default. And last but not least, which is some automatic private IP addresses, which are this, and these are also restricted. So if you are asked a question, these would not be assigned to it. Um, and there's one more actually that we go through. It's called like just any IP address or all IP addresses can be addressed using the 0.0.0.0/0. This just signifies that any IP address is able to communicate with anything else. So we'll be going more into this when we go into the ARP registers and routing tables in near future. So yeah, okay. So starting off with our first, I guess, actual question. Um, the question is, if transmission delay and propagation delay in sliding window protocol are 1 millisecond and 49.5 milliseconds respectively, what should the sender's window size be to get this maximum efficiency? So in the first slide, we were given some formulas that um, that we have access to that we need for this specific question. Um, but before that, we'll just list out some content that we need to understand. So our propagation delay is given at 49.5 milliseconds. Then we have our transmission delay, which is 1 millisecond. Um, and then we have this WS, which is the sender window size. So from here, if we go back to the formulas that we have, if we look at this, since we know that we're working with sliding window mechanism, we have this formula here, finding the efficiency is maximized by finding the minimum between 1 and this ratio WS over 1 plus 2A. So specifically, we'll be looking at um, that equation. So we have WS over 1 plus 2A. And here we're basically given this, and we have to set it to maximum efficiency. Therefore, we would set this equal to 1 as whatever the minimum would be, we would be choosing, I guess, the most optimal window size for this transmission. So once we set that to 1, we get WS, so the sliding window size equals 1 plus 2A. And from before the midterm, we know what A is equal to. A is equal to TP, so propagation delay over transmission delay. In this case, which is 49.5 milliseconds over 1 millisecond, which is 49.5. That's our A value. And then if we just plug that into the formula here, we get 1 plus 2 times 49.5, which is 1 plus 99, which is 100. So therefore, WS equals 100, and that would be our final answer. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. Any questions so far?
Yeah, I have a question. Like, let's say the question was asking for minimum efficiency, then would you put 0 instead of 1 or
Then
something?
minimum efficiency would occur if it was 0. So if what you're saying is true, we'll change color. So WS over 1 plus 2A equals 0. We're not given enough information in this case to determine that, because when we factor everything out, WS must be 1. It must be 0, sorry, for that to occur. So therefore, no transmission would happen. That's for least efficiency. I haven't seen any questions where that's asked, and if it is, we would be given more information or more insight to what the requirements would be for that network.
Okay, okay. And then if it was like 50% efficiency, we just put like 0.5.
Half. Yeah, it would be
Okay, yeah,
half. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, okay. Makes sense. Thanks.
Yep. Okay, so next question. This one, I know a lot of my friends and myself included really messed up on this checksum versus uh, CRC question. So just in case we're asked that, I don't want any of us to mess up, and we'll be going through this question to verify, calculate the checksum that's being sent out, and also make sure that when it's received, how to do that process and um, what we are to expect from it. So starting first, this question was given in the prof slides. We were asked here to use an 8-bit um, not frame, sorry, that's not the right word, but divide into 8-bit segments. So I'm just going to mute this person. Sorry about that. So in this question, we're asked to divide into 8-bit segments. So we would divide as it requests into 8 bits. So this would be the first segment, second segment, third segment, and that's our last segment. So we have our 4 segments, and what we must do in order for this to happen, to calculate this, is add all of these up with one another. So to make our lives easier, you can use your calculator, and that's what I have done. And you would get an answer of 1000. So here we would get 2 carry bits at the start. The rest is sorry, 1 carry bit at the start. Sorry, this is 8. My bad. That's 8. And we have these 2 carry bits at the start. And what we must do is wrap them around and re-add them to our actual checksum value that we're getting to. So basically, we're doing this value plus 0, 1, 0, and we get 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, and 0. I have not made any mistakes. Okay. So this is our value that we will now take a ones complement of. And our outcome would be 1, 1, 0, 0. So now, after taking this ones complement, whatever value that you're presented with is now your final, I guess, checksum that you have. And what you do to it is that you would append it to the end of the stream. So once you get the checksum, you would add it to the end of the bit stream, and that would become, you would send this whole line over when you're transmitting from, let's say, A to B. Sorry, where the hell is the eraser? My bad. Okay. So now that we have this, if we want to go the other way around, so now let's say if we want to go from B to A instead, or like from A to B, but now we want to ensure that whatever value that B is getting, it's actually valid or not. We would go and take this. We have these eight bit segments, and we have our checksum. And what we would do is we would add up everything together. So we would add up all the segments. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is our fifth, which we added onto it, and we would get this. So what we had initially, which is the one. Oh, sorry, we would not use that. We would already have added or done the loop around. So therefore, we would be left with 0, 0, 1, 0, 0. And our checksum value that we have, which is 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0. We're left with all ones. As you can see, every bit that's 0 here is a 1 here on the other addition, so everything ends up being 1. And last but not least, we take our ones complement again, and we're left with all zeros. So if your final answer is all zeros, then therefore you know that you have verified and the transmission has happened safely and securely. So all good on this question? Okay, moving on. Now we're heading into more of the subnetting and actual IP address handling sections. So the question here we're being asked, a network on the internet has a subnet mask of 255.255.240.0. Then it's asking us what is the maximum number of hosts that this subnet mask or this network with this subnet mask can handle. The first step when you receive a question where you're being asked to answer with a number of hosts that it can handle is convert the subnet mask into bits. So we know that we have one. So the first, we'll just, anything that's all 255s, I'll leave as is because we're not going to be addressing them. We don't we don't worry about them. And 240 converted into binary is 1111 0000. And then last address is also going to be all zeros. Okay. From here, you have to the way that the subnets are made up, if you don't already know, is that you have two segments. The 255s refer you can refer to them as ones, so they will all be ones. So the first half or the first part until all the ones are completed, this is referred to as your network portion. And this is how many bits when you have your IP address. This you can tell from your subnet mask is how many bits are assigned to the network portion of that IP address. For the second part, for the second half here, This is going to be assigned for the number of hosts you would basically have within that network. And the way that you determine that once you've determined what part is your network portion versus your hosts is that you find the number of bits that are in this host component, which in this case is 4 and 12 and 8, which gives us 12 bits. And therefore, with these 12 bits that we have, if we were to find the total number of possibilities, we would have to do, since this is binary, so 2 to the power of 12, which equals, if you do the math, which equals 4,096 hosts. Um, and that you would think that is your answer, but I'm going to correct you there. So this is the total number of IP addresses that this network with this subnet mask can handle. But for the total number of hosts that it can handle is always 2 minus. So you would do 4096 minus 2. And the reason for this is that there is one address that's assigned for the network ID, and the second one is assigned for the broadcast, sorry, ID, or broadcast IP. So when basically, I will explain this later, there's another question that comes, but that's kind of the reason why we always do this subtraction of minus 2. And therefore, we're left with 4,094 hosts. That would be your final answer for this question. I'll leave it up for any questions real quick. Okay, moving on. Now, now basically we have a slightly different question. So the question here is asking, you have 3 departments, and each of those departments is asking for a minimum of 40, 100, and 20 IP addresses respectively. And try to be as conservative as possible and give 3 subnets within a range that I have decided on the right side. That would be enough to cover the requested minimums. So the question, or the IP address that I have chosen for this question is 10.76.8.0/24. So given this, we have to plan and decide what we want our subnets or our ranges to be that would be able to suffice these ranges of 40, 100, and 20 respectively. So from here, the first thing that I like to do is, as I have kind of put a little note here, is to round each of these numbers, so respectively, up to the nearest 2 to the power x. So if we were to start from the top, we have 40, it's too big, 40. When you round up, so we have 36, 32, and then we have 64, which is our one up, which when we convert to 2 to the power of x, we get 2 to the power of 6. And another part that we have to add is also take into account the minus 2 that's here. The reason, once again, for that is because we have to ensure that whatever IP or whatever range that we're assigning is able to handle, once again, that network and that broadcast ID. So if this is minus 2, this is 62 total hosts that we would assign for this first network. Then when we go to 100 devices, we multiply 64 by 2. And the next to the power that we have here is 128, which is 2 to the power of 7 minus 2 is 126. And same for the last one. We have 20, which is and you round up, which is 32. 2, which is 2 to the power of 5 minus 2 gives us 30, which, just a final check, all three of these are respectively greater than all three of these. So once we have this, the most important information that we need to gather from this are these exponents that we have assigned. That information we'll be using on in the next part to determine what um, or what our subnets will look like. So this is the personal, like this next part is kind of a personal decision that I like to make. So I start with the largest subnet that we need to design. So we start off with 100, right? That is, in this case, it is the largest. It just gives you a better way to visualize this when you go about to do the actual math. So here we have the total number of bits that we would be assigning is this exponent that we have. So we have this 2 to the power of 7. That's the number of addresses that we want to put in this subnet that we're creating. And for those who this might be new to, the 7 at the top is actually designated to the number of bits assigned to the host segment of the IP address that we're making. So then to accomplish this, we do 32, which is the total number of bits within a network, because we have 4 octets, so each of these is known as an octet. 4 octets, each is assigned 8 bits respectively, therefore 32 total bits assigned to the IP address. We take away 7, we're left with 25. So therefore, um, that would be our respective subnet for this specific network that we're trying to design. And therefore, we would take the IP address that we've assigned, which is 10.76.8.0 slash 2025. So we just put that in there. And I'll highlight this so it's easier for you guys to read along. So that is our first subnet that we have. And just something I like to do as well, given what we have designed, is to add the range of IP addresses that we would be able to assign given this specific IP address, or given the specific network address. So the range for this subnet, we start from 10.76.8.0, going all the way up to 10.76.8.127. So what we're doing is basically adding this 128, or total number of addresses that we have in this 2 to the power 7, which is 128, and we're taking away 1 and adding it to the initial um, network address that we have. And from here, once again, just as a reminder, this is going to be your NID, network ID, and this is your broadcast. So these are just short forms that are used in industry for each of them respectively. Okay, so that's for the first subnet that we have. Moving on to the next, we are going to be doing 40, which is designing for 40 addresses. And here we have decided that we would do 2 to the power 6. Once again, number of bits for network. And here we will add on to what is previously assigned. So this is the last broadcast address of the previous network. Therefore, when we go into the new network, we want to make sure that we're not overlapping with the previous range that we have assigned. And so we would start from this plus 1. So that would be our network address. So 10.76.8.128 slash, once again here we do 32 minus 6, 26, and we're given 26 for our subnet mask. And once again, we'll go through the process of finding the range. I'm just going to write this out in case you have any questions. Do let me know. Move that down. Going from that to 128 plus 61 in this case. Sorry, 63 in this case. We're left with 10.76.8.191. So this is our range for the second subnet that we designed that's assigned to the 40 IP addresses. And for the last one, we have the one with 20 hosts, and our IP or our bit assignment that we have done is 2 to the power of 5. Once again, 5 is our number of host bits that we have, and we would increment from the previous. So we have 191, so we'd plus 1 from that, and we would start with 10.76.192 slash, then to find it we would do 32 bits minus 5, giving us 27. 27 is our subnet mask. And one final range calculation, we would start off at 10 dots, going all the way up to, now this time we'll do 31 in the addition. So we go up to 10.76.8.223, if I'm correct, yeah. And once again, highlight our answer. So that is our final value that we would refer to. Um, there's a question at the bottom, but I know that question is a little bit more theory. So before we move on to that, does everyone understand what we did for this first one here?
I just got a question for the ranges. So I think for the first subnet that we created, right? I think we included the broadcast IP address and the network IP as well, right? In the range.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So we're supposed to do that then if we're like
Or
given.
because in this question we're just being asked to assign 3 subnet addresses,
Right.
and enough to cover everything. That was just addition on my part to help you guys
Okay.
understand what is going on here.
Okay, okay, okay. Okay, I was
That's the
confused because I
yeah.
thought the range was for the host addresses specifically, but yeah, I guess it makes sense. Like
Yeah, you
total
can see
available
here
IP.
like 3 subnet addresses. That's what the question is asking.
Okay, okay,
And this is just taking into account these minus twos that we are applying early in the question.
okay,
But yeah.
okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Hey Krish,
Yep.
I have two questions. First one is about the ranges, right? Um, is there a specific reason why you did 100 first, or it doesn't really matter? You just
As
gave
I said,
random
as I said
ranges.
earlier, that was a personal
Mm.
preference. So
Oh,
the
okay, okay,
reasoning behind me doing 100 is just so we start off with the biggest one.
right,
So like if I were to visually just quickly draw this out, if we have this range vertically, and let's say this is vertically, we have this is 255. The first subnet that we designed is 128, which is for the 100. That would
right,
take up half of the network that we have, so that's kind of easy to visualize. Then if we move on to the next, it would take up half of the remainder, and then if we do it one more time, it would take up half of that remainder. So this is our number 1, our number 2, and then our number 3, respectively 1, 2, and 3. Does that make sense?
right. Right. Okay, makes sense. And sorry, second question, right? You know the -2 you did? For example, like 2 to the power 6 minus 2, right?
Yep.
Shouldn't we already consider the 2 when we're doing like the host? For example, like let's say the number of hosts required is 63, right? Shouldn't we round that, like add the 2 at the beginning and make it 65, and then we do like 128?
I mean,
Does
they would
that
both end
make
up with the
sense?
same kind of outcome. But what you're saying, you're saying to add before you find the
Right.
round. So you're saying to
Right, right.
do that is much smarter in a way.
Because that won't give the same answer, right? Because if you do 63 and you round to 64, right, and then you subtract the 2 later, we're going to be stuck with the 64.
No,
But
but
if we add at the beginning, right?
our question is asking for 40, 120, 120.
No, no, it's a theoretical question,
Okay,
though.
okay, okay, I see.
Yeah, yeah,
So, but yeah, in that case, what you're saying is to add first before
right,
you convert into, which is actually smart. So you're saying to do minus, or sorry, plus two, plus two,
right,
plus two, then you round up, and therefore you won't need
right,
to do this minus two afterwards.
exactly. Yeah,
So that is much better actually. Thanks for the idea.
no worries.
Yeah, so I have a question as well. What if they give us too many IPs for range?
Oh, sorry, what do you mean too many IPs for the range? I'm not understanding.
So you know how they give 100, 40, and 20. What if and you got to like around 253, right? What if they gave us say like five more IP addresses and we go over the range? Go, hey,
Um,
will
you can
that be
state
a
that,
question?
like, if that is a question. So what Louis is asking here is that if, let's say, given the same subnet that we have, if we're asked to assign, like, let's say 260, let me put this in a different color. We're asked to assign 260 IP addresses. That is outside of this range of the subnet slash 24 because the subnet is you're only able to assign a maximum of, as I drew earlier down here, 256 total addresses. So since it's greater, you can state that we cannot design this network with 260 like IP addresses because the the subnet that we've been given is not able to withstand or not able to um, take that load in a way. So you would request we would need to be assigned a larger subnet to then be able to do this question.
Oh, okay, I see. And so yeah, there's no like hidden calculations that's gonna happen. It's some trick question. Okay, okay.
I mean
Thanks.
that could be that is a trick question that you just asked. Like if this happens
Hmm.
where the number of IPs is greater than the subnet that we've been given, you would state that clearly that this is not possible because of the limitations provided by the subnet. So,
Okay, I see. Okay. Thank you very much.
yep. Okay. Assuming that's all, we'll move on to the next one. So wire acknowledgements used in 802.11. Um, I'm gonna quiz. Who knows what 802.11 is? Anyone? If not, I'll say, but I'm just want to make sure you guys are
Wi-Fi.
paying attention. Yo, smart guy. Okay, so this we know is Wi-Fi, and what it's asking is why do we have to use these acknowledgements within Wi-Fi and not Ethernet and not wired Ethernet? So the reasoning behind this, there's actually three kind of sub reasons that you can explain and talk about. I don't know what the professor would request in this case, but the first reason that I was able to kind of deduce to is wireless cannot detect collisions. So therefore, it requires the acknowledgements to ensure that packets have actually been sent or received. Second is wireless channels. are very noisy and therefore high error rates. Resulting in like packet disruption. So if you were to send a packet, the chances of it getting like inflicted or get having it collide with something else. Therefore, this would be your second reason. And third, we always have. We'll be talking about this a little bit later. The hidden nodes. Um, and any hidden node that, let's say, your device cannot detect. Um, and if you were to send, if you and a hidden node send packets at the same time, then you could once again collide, resulting in packets being lost. So I mean, I wasn't able to find solutions for this question. If any of you have, let me know what the professor or what the question actually has the answer for. But this is just what I was able to deduce based on the question that I got.
As long as you like explain the reasoning and like your reasoning is sound, it's fine. Whatever you put. Like the only other stuff you could put is that, like you said, that the medium, like wired, is more reliable than wireless. Like the medium itself that you use in wired. And
Yep.
the other thing is that because of it being so reliable, the chance of failure is so low. So you don't want to add extra overhead of acknowledgements that you would have to do in wireless. So you can just avoid wire. Yeah, he had just said that there's
Okay, that's the same
like
thing.
higher bit
Yeah.
error rates and no hidden nodes. So as long as you just
Yeah.
explain like with a sound reasoning, he'll give you the marks.
Okay. Perfect. Yep. All right. There's another question, similar to what we did on the previous page at the top. I just left it here if you guys want to do some extra practice on your end. And if we have time at the end, we can come back to it and look through it. Okay. So moving on to our next little bit, um, we're being asked to find the broadcast address for the network of 192.57.78.128/27. So what do we do here? The first step that we would take is converting everything down to bits. So to do that, we um, we know here that since this is /27, that is the network portion of the IP address. There, and when we do 32 minus 27, we get 5. And therefore, since 5 bits would still be assigned in this last octet, we don't need to convert everything into binary, just what is required, which is the 128. So we can leave the 192.57.78 and then just convert the 128 into binary, which is 1 and then all zeros. From here, we zoom in, we figure out that there's 5 bits that are assigned for the host. Therefore, we can draw a little imaginary line here, signifying that this is the host side and this is the network side. And here we're not trying to find how many IP addresses there are, but to find the broadcast address for a network, what you do is take all of the host bits and you flip them to 1. And once you do that, you will be presented um, with your broadcast address for that network. So here we do that. So we'll just leave the first section the same. We'll write it out at the end in our answer. We have 1 0 0, then we have 5 ones corresponding. This is our last octet that we have. Converting this into decimal, we get 159, and therefore our final answer would be 192.5778.159. That is your final answer that you would present in your question. That is your broadcast address. We're all good to move on? Okay. Next question. This is one that works a little bit. You have to do some analysis and some verification before you move on. The first part of this is that we're given an IP address, or given a network address, sorry, um, with a subnet mask of this ending in 240. And we're being asked to find 3 valid host addresses from the list provided below. Step 1 here is usually step 1 in any of these subnetting questions is to find the subnet value, or it's the number of hosts in a way. So which is determined by when you access the subnet. And once you do that, you are left with, sorry, one sec. Okay. You convert this, or you see that 240, um, since the first bits are all set to 1, we convert 240 into binary. That is 240 converted into binary. And, sorry, no, my bad. 1 bit was extra. So, no, it is right. I apologize for the confusion. So there's 4 bits on, 4 bits off within 240 as your subnet mask. Here we know that everything that's set to 0 and beyond is our host section, and that range is from 0 going up to 15. So we have all zeros, and when all 4 of these bits are set to 1, then you have 15. And basically then you go down the list of questions and see which of them falls under this range of 192.168.27.0, and then this last one goes from 0 to 15. And any of these, or any of the answers that fall within this range, will be valid. So we have A, which is valid, we have B, which is valid, and we have D, which is valid. The rest of the IP addresses are outside the range, therefore we cannot assign it to this network. Any questions before moving on? Sounds good. Okay, so this one is a little bit different. You need some theoretical knowledge along with some, I guess, mathematical subnetting knowledge. Starting from scratch, or starting from the first one, it's saying just to see which of the following IP addresses can be assigned to a host device. So we don't know if there's one or multiple IP addresses that we can assign here. So therefore, we'll just do all of them to kind of give you an idea of why or why not each of them is valid. So for the first one, we start with our subnet calculation as usual. So 32 minus 27 equals 5. And when we do 2 to the power of 5, we get 32 addresses. And since we get 32 addresses, uh, this subnet would be a network address for the range, because you know that when we have 32, the range is actually less than 32. So the last octet can range from 0 to 31 for the first subnet within that subnet mask. When you move on to the second one, you would get the range from 32 going up to 63. So given that 32 is the first address within the second range that we're given, or that we have deduced, we know that this is a network. Oops. Network ID. Therefore, host cannot be assigned to it. I won't write it down for everyone, but therefore we can ignore this first one. The second one, as a matter of fact, we will do the same thing. 32 minus 23 gives us 9. When we do 2 to the power of 9, we get 512. And since this 2 is within this range of, let's say, 10.0 going all the way up to 10.511, we know that this is a valid address, and therefore we can verify it and give it the green signal. So this would be our answer um, for this question. But just to prove why the rest of them are not, so you have an idea, as I said in one of the earlier slides, this is the loopback address, and therefore it cannot be assigned to a host by a network itself. So this question is a little bit vague, so I can understand the confusion. I was too confused when I first did this question, but the reasoning is that a loopback address is only within a local host, so within your laptop or within a computer, any device. It's only within that device that it can be accessed. Therefore, you cannot be assigned it via a network. This next one actually will be referring back to the first or this slide that we have here. The IP address that we were given is 224.0.0.10. And if we see here, that falls under this range of class D, 224.0.0. And we can see here that this is a multicast address. And multicast is primarily used between like the higher ups like routers, and this is not on a network level. You wouldn't find it commonly on a network unless it's specifically assigned. Therefore, we know that it cannot be assigned to a host which is being asked, which is what's being asked within this question. So if we, oops. So then if we were to go back to our question, we can state here that this address is multicast, which is also known as a class D address, therefore cannot be assigned to a host. And we would X that one out too. This next one, if we do the same process as A and B in this, we can determine that this ends up being a broadcast. Therefore, once again, it cannot be assigned to a host. And this last one, you see that this one does fall under class A. So class A address, and we know that, and based on the subnet, there's two reasons why this wouldn't be allowed. Mainly is because it's we've been given an address which would just be the network. So 0.0. Whenever you see that as the first address, you can kind of assume in a way that this would be the network ID. Therefore, once again, you cannot assign this. So all of these cannot be assigned. Only valid one that we have in this case is B. Any questions?
I missed the explanation for E.
Yeah. So for E, I mean, I didn't explain it really. I just kind of said that it's broadcast because I've done this question. But the reasoning behind it is that if you were to follow the same kind of sequence as above, so if we were to do 32 minus 28, I'll just do it. Screw it. 32 minus 28, so this is where the 28 is coming from. 32 is the number of bits within an IP address, and we get 4. And once we do 2 to the power of 4, we have 16 total addresses that we can assign. Therefore, the ranges that we would get would be 0 going up to 30. Sorry, going up to 15. 16 going up to 31. And then next range would be 32 going down to 47. So you would add those 16 addresses or 16 values within these ranges, and you see that since 47 appears, and that is the last bit that's assigned to the host portion, we can say that this, and since it's the last value, this would be the broadcast IP address. All good?
Hey, Krish. If we're given a range, right, that's within class A, B, or C, but we're not given the subnet mask, we won't have enough information, right? And we just say it can't host it.
You can say that you cannot answer that question validly.
Mm.
I mean, if there's no, so I would go about it in two ways. If
Mhm.
you're given, let's say, if you're, I mean, I'm not sure if you want to follow this or not, but I'm just saying that if I were in your scenario and if there was a question, and let's say in this same example that we have, this question we are not given this the subnet mask. If we were just given this, which is like the sorry, if we were just given this and we're asked to deduce based on all the options, and given that none of the other options have valid reasons to be a host address, you would say that this one would be true given that a subnet address is assigned, but given that it's not, as of now, my statement would be none of the above, because that would be valid. None of the above would be valid, but you just don't have enough information to answer that question if you were getting that on the actual exam.
Right. I guess like a question they could spin is like, what would be the subnet mask to make it valid, right? Something like that.
Yeah, that could be like part two or something like that. Like if they want to do it that way.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Next question. We're actually flying through this pretty fast. It's only been an hour. Um, okay. So this next part, I would probably expect a lot of theory as well as maybe like one or two practical questions based on the professor's statements from last week. Um, First, spanning tree algorithm. Just to give a little overview about what it is when you have multiple switches within a network, uh, you're bound to have maybe a loop of some sort. So let's say within this network, you can see that there is a loop that forms here, another loop that forms between these two switches. So like the reasoning why we're applying this algorithm, actually I can go into some little bit more depth just to get some theory, is that we'll get into this a little bit later as well, but let's say you have a device that needs to communicate with another device, but the switches don't know where that address needs to be sent. Therefore, it will do like a broadcast and sending to all available nodes, which will then trigger addresses that are flying back and forth between these links, overloading the whole network, right? Resulting in basically your network crashing out. Or like communication would be very slow, right? And you would not be able to get through that. So what switches have built in nowadays is the spanning tree protocol, which then, in a way, um, deletes some of these trunks that one of will decide later, but that would not be needed to be able to answer or to be able to run that network. So without that port, you would still be able to run the network properly, avoid any loops from occurring. So this is just some theory and some steps that you would kind of go into when you're given a question like this, or if you were to solve it like from scratch. Primarily within a network, the node that has the lowest priority, which relates usually to the MAC address, to its MAC address, that's the switch that its is assigned as the root address or root switch. And once you have that root switch, then you would kind of ladder down and determine what other switches would be linked to it and how the whole like tree would look. So in this case, like this question that we're given, we won't be answering this one. We'll be doing a different one, but we clearly know that A here is the root switch, communicates with C, which then branches down to B and D, and B and D branch out to E. Every switch will choose to find the switch to connect to. So let's say if we're talking about E, wants to connect to one of these but doesn't know which one. We want to figure out which of these has a lower like priority, so or like distance from the switch. So how many hops will it take to get to the switch? It takes 1, 2, and 3. Same thing here, 1, 2, and 3. Therefore, both are even, and thus it will choose the switch with the lower MAC address. So in this case, switch B. So we can clearly say that this trunk port will be deactivated, and moving into the difference between the switch C and D, there are these two ports, um, and both of the ports on each end are going to have a designated MAC address for that port itself. And it's hard to determine now because we're not provided that information yet. But if we were given that information, we would be able to determine which of them is the lowest MAC address from D going on to C. Therefore, we know which of the trunks to deactivate in that case. And when I say trunk port, I might use this term in the future as well. Trunk port is basically a port that is used to connect switches. So all of these would be considered trunk ports. Mohib, you have a question? Oh, okay. Yeah, and Angela just sent a link to the full solution to that question that's provided here. I just didn't do it because I know a lot of my friends have already gone through this, so therefore I'm going to do a slightly different question that involves a different layout. And here, assuming that we aren't given this, we would have to start from scratch and um, and design that as well. But that's just to save on time when we're actually doing this question. So this question, we're being asked to design topology. So four switches form the following topology. All links are duplex Ethernet, and the design is that switch 1 is connected to 2 and 3, switch 2 is connected to the rest of them, same as switch 3, and switch 4 is connected to 2 and 3. So if we were to draw it out, we would get this. All the rules are validated. Switch 2 and 3 are connected to the rest and each other. Switch 4 is only to 2 and 3, and switch 1 is only to 1 and 3. So 2 and 3, sorry. Um, and here we can, like, this question is phrased a little bit differently than the prof does, but all links have a cost of 1. This just says like how like the jumps or hops that you get from one to the next. So you don't necessarily need to think of it as cost, but that might be a way to help you understand what is being asked. Okay, so assume that we're also doing, we have the standard of 802.1d, which is the STP IEEE like number that we're given, and usually the usual tie-breaking rules are like being applied in this question. So starting off with part A, identify the root bridge. So here we are just going to assume that the MAC addresses will be like, let's say A for 1, B for 2, C for 3, and D for 4. And when I say the MAC address, this would be like all 6 bytes of the MAC address would be assigned the B values. So just to save on time, I'll only write it once. But that's kind of how you can think of it when you go about doing it. So just give me 1 second. Okay. Yeah. So here, given that we can clearly see which of the switches has the lowest MAC address, we can just clearly state that switch 1 has the lowest MAC address, and we're not told, and as in the previous question, like the step state, we're not told what the priority levels are. Therefore, we can assume that this would be valid. I'll just move up to thicker marker. So for part B, we're being asked for which non-root switch, for each non-root switch, determine its root port. So what this is asking is which port will it use to communicate with the root switch, or which one will it jump to first. So for S2, we can go ahead and state that since S2 only has one port connecting to the root, we can state that therefore it will communicate to S1 directly using this port BA. We'll just use that, B and A. For S3, once again, only one way to communicate to S1. Therefore, we will use the connection C to A. And as for S4, we have two options. So one going through S2, one going through S3. So which of them would you choose? Uh, and based on the rule that we have stated earlier, it would choose the switch that has the lower MAC address. In this case, B is lower than C. Therefore, it will choose S2 since MAC address is lower. And that is part B. Moving on to the next page. Same topology is being used. Same questions, just new page for more space. Going on to part C. The question is asking, for each link, determine which port is the designated port. So what this is asking, to clarify, is identify all the links in the tree and whether they should be on or off. So we know that we are using this port to connect to S2, but the other ports may or may not be being used. Therefore, we have to determine whether or not they would be on or off, and that's what we'll do here. So, starting with S1, going to S2, we know this port is S2's root port, therefore it cannot be touched. So we don't do anything to it, or it stays on. So no, we don't do anything to this port. It's on. We don't change it. Next one for S1, we have S3. S1 to S3. Once again, this is S3's root port. Therefore, we would not change anything to it. Let me just identify that. Okay. Moving on to S2. We know S1 is its root port, but whatever is not in its root, we have S3. And since this is neither of S1 or S2 nor S3's root port, we know this port can be demolished, or like can be terminated or turned off for the current use case. And then S2 to S4. And the same rules will also apply between S3 and S4. Since S2 and S3 respectively are closest to S4, we can clearly say that S2's, or as of now we cannot say anything, but we would keep both of these on, both of these links, as of now we have not finally decided which we won't be communicating with. So these are the designated ports that we have assigned. So as of now, we have untouched 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the trunk ports that are on this switch. Moving on to part D. Mark which ports end up in the blocking states. So from kind of like stepping back from the previous question, from the previous part of this question, I'm just going to duplicate this. Which of these would be in their blocking state? As we identified that 4 of these are currently valid, or we have not touched them. So now we will just send this one to the blocking state, but in the previous one, since we know that S4 chooses S2 to communicate, we also can state that the link between S3 and S4 can also be set into its blocking state. And lastly, part E is asking us to draw the final spanning tree, which is used with the disabled ports turned off or just removed outright. So to do that, we'll do one final one. And we would go ahead and just not include these two links as this is our final spanning tree that has been designed. That might have been a lot, but if anyone has any questions, please do ask. Okay.
Did you go over the logic for the designated port section for part C? Could you just go over if you can just go over it one more time?
But like, do you want some more details, or is that all right? Like,
Just
what?
specifically for why we don't choose the S2 to S3 link for the designated uh port links.
Oh yeah. The reason why we don't communicate between S2 and S3, mainly, I mean, it's in the previous question, because the switch that it's being connected to, it's being connected to switch 1 and switch 3. So sorry. So S2 is being connected to switch 1 and switch 3. To choose between these two, we know that S1 is the root switch in this case, since it has the lowest lowest MAC address. Therefore, it will outright just choose this as its root port. And since this is its since this is its root port, and same with S3, it doesn't need to connect to S2 to get to S1, since it has its own connection to S1. Therefore, it won't need this connection to communicate with either one of them.
Okay. So because it has a direct connection to the root bridge, you don't need the intermediary connection between S2 then.
Yep,
Okay.
that's right.
All right. Got it. Gotcha. Thank you.
Anything else?
Sorry, Krish. Just for part C again, right? Because here we picked S3 and S4 to still stay on. Why is that the case? Why don't we turn it off here since we know it's already connected to S2?
Okay. Um, oh wait, true. Wait. We do end up blocking it anyway. Sorry, I just wrote it wrong here. My apologies. So these two temporarily, I forgot to conclude this part. I kind of sped through it. So initially they're on because S4 can use S3 or S2 to end up going to S1 as it's to the root of the STP. But moving forward, actually, I didn't know why I didn't include this. Um, we figure out, as we did on the previous page as well, is that we decide which of the two has the lower priority or the lower MAC address in this case. And since we know S2 does have a lower MAC address, we would set S4's designated port, which would be S2, in its on state, and we would decide to set the S4 and S3's trunk port in its off state. So this was just a temporary decision, and then you would elaborate a little bit more into determining whether or not the port will actually be in its blocking state or not. So that was a correction on my part, my bad.
So what would be the difference for the answer for C and D? Is D just actually just drawing
D
the
is just drawing
diagram?
it out. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Yep. All right. So moving on, we are going into some route aggregation questions. So what is route aggregation? It's also known, it has another term that we can use, which is called supernetting. And as we were doing in like before doing the STP question, we were doing some like subnetting, which is breaking down a network into more networks in order to, I guess, like for security reasons or for, let's say, firewall rules that you want to apply between two sub networks. Here, we're kind of combining those sub networks into one port to then communicate out to the real world. That's the purpose of this route aggregation, also known as supernetting. And we'll go into some detailed questions about it. Um, So this question we're given, a router has just received the following new IP addresses. So we have the three IP addresses that are assigned there. Sorry, four, my bad. So we have these four IP addresses that are assigned there. If all of them are going to be using the same outgoing line, what will be the advertised aggregated address for this, I guess, network that the router will communicate through? So to quickly just visualize what's going on here, if we were to draw it out, we have router. Oh, that's disgusting. We have router. Let's call it R1. It has the four network addresses that we were given in the question coming in. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we want to kind of, in a way, combine all of them so that when they all end up in the router, everything is only communicating through this one port out to the real world. So this would also be known as like when you are like when you have a modem, you are connecting just like one line provided by your ISP, your internet service provider, into that router, and all your local addresses or your local devices are able to use that modem or that router to communicate out to the world. So the same thing we'll be trying to do here, ensuring that we can aggregate all four of these networks that were provided, and we can put them out on the same line and figure out which of them is capable of doing that, of the four options that were given. So first step here, hope this is not new news, convert everything into binary. So from here, we would start converting into binary. We have the 57s, so this would be, let me just zoom in. And since this is going to be repeated across all four of them, I'll just duplicate. And for the last one, we have 0. And the last one was like all zeros, so it's zeros, and then all these are ending in zeros as well. And we have this designed, this laid out. So converting them into or seeing what the subnets are for each, we would take 19. Oops. 19 is what's assigned to all of these, and therefore we have this kind of link that's here. You can hopefully see that. So that's what we have. So we have 8, 8, and 1. Wait a second. Which are common between all um, which are common between all four of these networks that were assigned. So what you do is that you find however many of these bits follow the same initial network structure, and draw that dashed line that's there. From here, you can determine that this is 8 bits, this is 8 bits, this is 1 bit. You can see that that is going to be your new subnet mask, which is your number of bits that are set for your network, which is 17 bits. So we can cancel or remove these two from our options as we have to use the ones that have 17 as your subnet mask. Next, to determine which of these two we'll be using, we see that this third octet, if we were to write out this network address, we would have this 57.16, and since all of these are set to 0, the third one would be 0.0 slash subnet here, which is 17. So this would be our trunked, or not our trunked, sorry, this would be our aggregated IP address that we would use to communicate out to the real world. And that gets assigned here. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing. Banir, what's your question? Sorry, I don't understand. What do you mean by mismatch?
I might just be wrong, but like, see how at the top it says 5716 960? 57, yeah, and then it's /19, but like the one on the left is /17. Like,
Yeah.
is that a mistake or am I
No,
just, did I
no,
not
that's
click
not.
something?
That's not a mistake. Within the question itself, the question is phrased right. It's laid out correctly. The way that you have to do this, I mentioned, I will redo it, is that you have to determine which of the bits in the whole stream that you provided, so like all of these, which of them are constantly identical without any bit changes. So you can see this is all 57, this is all 16, and these are zeros, but then you have this bit flip, which is 1, and then you have 2 zeros. So you can't use this, you're not allowed to use that as your actual value, and therefore when you see this, when you see the number of bits that you're using in this part, which is 17, that's where you would use this as your subnet.
Oh, okay. So in the
We're
question, they'll give us those as well, like on the left, or was it?
maybe not. Like maybe it could be like, okay, what is the aggregate? I mean, there's another question after this.
Oh, okay. Then it's
Um,
fine. Yeah.
like what will
Okay.
be the aggregated like IP address for these 4 networks that I'm providing you with? And you wouldn't be given any of these, and you would just have to determine it on your own. So
Okay.
you could be doing that. This could also be multiple choice. It depends on the professor's mode, I guess.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So next, similar question. This time I've laid out all of the binary bits that we'll need. So a router has the following CIDR entries in its routing table, and if a packet, so we have all these IP addresses with or networks connected to the following interfaces that we have. So if a packet with a destination address of 139.46.39.5 arrived at this router, through what interface will it send it to? So I have two problems here. Like they're just the same question, but just with different IP addresses that are being outbound. And specifically for this, we can see that when we convert, so we have these binary conversions already. This is something you would have to do as well before answering this question. Um, you would see that you would have to do the same thing with this. So converting 135, the 39.5 all the way down into binary as well. One sec. Yeah, sorry. So we would convert this into binary. So ones. Let me just convert real quick. I don't have it written down. and then we have 46, which is 001, and then this last one, which is 39, we have and then last is dot 5. So okay. Um, and then if we were to do the same with the 47, we would have the same initial bits going up until here, so 001. Okay. So from here, we have to, once again, as we did on the previous question, determine which stream or which of the following ports are or the bits are aligned with any of the ones that were provided within the address mask section. So if we were to do that for the 39.5, which is the first blue stream that we have, we can see that if we compare all of these with all of these, going all the way down, we can see that this third bit is where we terminate the similarity between all of these, and hence determine whether or not this router will be used to communicate, or this IP address will be used to communicate with any of these. We see that once we have this determined, we can kind of go in to figure out what the remainder is. Actually, sorry, let me backtrack. My bad. So the reason why 39.5 isn't going to communicate with any of the addresses here is because the last two octets that we have, 39 and 5, are less than what we have provided in this question. So we have .56.0, 44, 48. Since this is less than all of these, we can automatically determine that we cannot communicate this IP or this IP destination IP address through any of our interfaces that we have. So my bad for the confusion. We didn't have to do that for this question. So we can clearly state that since, let's use purple, since 39 is less than 56.0, 44.0, and 48.0, therefore we cannot outbound any communication between the source and the destination IP address that we are given. So this would not be allowed. Okay. When we move to the next one, which is the 47.5, the first check, as I should have done previously, is to see whether this falls under any of these ranges. So we see that it falls under this 44.0. It is greater than that, therefore it could come after this. But to verify whether it will or won't, we would end up drawing a line here. That's what this line is for. And stating that this is the 22nd bit that we have. And therefore, since our stream here, we call the 22nd bit here, since this bit stream matches with our interface 1, so we have our 001, and then 101, 11, and these two match. Therefore, we would be able to move on to the next step into determining whether or not this would actually be communicatable or not. Um, the next part is going to be the subnet. Since everything before the subnet is followed through with, we know that anything that comes after is going to be the network address, and anything can exist within these bits. Therefore, this statement or the 47.5 would be allowed um, through this interface 1. That would be your answer. Sorry for the confusion on this question. Any questions? Okay. And one more confusing question that a few people had some issues with. So suppose router A is responsible for 3 subnets from 172.16.28.0 going to 172.16.30. Could router A only store one network for these, or one entry for these 3 networks? So quickly converting just what we know is different. So we know this first part is the same between all 3 of the networks that we have. And the last part is also the same. What we need to check for is just going to be this middle bit for all 3. So 282930. Converting these out, we're left with okay. So given that we can determine which of these Harshal, can you mute please? Okay. Okay, sorry about that. So we would now determine which of the bits are once again common across these 3 addresses that we have. We can come out to the conclusion that everything before this, sorry, nope. Everything before this is identical. Therefore, we would determine how many bits come before this. We know 6 bits exist here. Previous 2 octets have 8 bits each, added to 6. Therefore, we are left with 22 total bits for the network. And to then transmit across this this IP or this network, we would use the network ID to aggregate all these ports as 172.16.28.0/22, as is what our subnet mask is. And that would be our answer. Okay. Yeah. I think we're moving on to sliding window question. So I'm going to take a quick break here. I think if you have any questions, I'll be around, but just need to get some water before then. Let's say like 5 minutes, so 7:40 p.m. we'll be back and we'll resume.
Sounds good.
So I'll be right back. Right, I am back. If anyone has any generic questions they want to ask, could be anything that we have done or haven't done yet. Just we have a few minutes till everyone else is back. Okay. We will go back to questions. Okay. Hopefully everyone is back from a quick little break. Okay. So this next question, it's also from Dr. Khaled's slides from last year or 2 years ago, maybe, and it's talking about selective repeat while sending using a window size of 8 on 100 megabits per second link speed. The distance between the two of them is 100 kilometers, and the signal speed is 2 times 10 to the power 5 kilometers per second. So first thing when I get this kind of question, what we're trying to find is the minimum packet size in bytes for transmission to be as efficient as possible. So if we go back, or if we were on that first slide with the formulas, if you have it open, um, we know that for that to occur, um, in terms of selective repeat, let me go bigger. Selective repeat, WR, so the receiving window must equal the sender's window. And what this means is that when you're kind of selecting and going through the bit streams as they come in, the sender's window must be equal to what the receiver's receiving. And looking at the same kind of question or like the function formatting that we did for the previous question earlier, to determine this, so to determine the size is the question. We would go into finding the sender window size, which is something that we have, and the dividend that we have here is 1 plus 2a, as we did before, and this must be greater than equal to 1. The reason why here we have it greater than equal to 1 is before, if we were to quickly take a glance, is that once again, we want to make it as efficient as possible. So to maximize efficiency, we want to use this 1 as our selected, you can say, answer. And therefore, if this value is greater than 1, any value greater than 1 will assist or will definitely result in the efficiency being maximized. Therefore, we set it greater than equal to 1, and we go from there. So once we have this, we know some information that we have So we continue. Um, we state that the window size that we're given is 8, and we divide it by 1 plus 2a. Let's move it over to the side. Okay, so here a, once again, we need to find the propagation speed and the transmission, sorry, the propagation delay and the transmission delay. And for these, we have the links. Sorry, we have the link speed, which is 100 kilometers, or link distance. Sorry, and we'll keep everything here in meters. Sorry, so we convert 100 kilometers into meters. We divide that by our signal speed, which is 2 times 10 to the power 8. And then that is our propagation delay. For our transmission delay, we have our x size. So this is going to be our variable that we're defining, which is the size of our packets. Divide that by 100 times 10 to the power 6, which is our link speed. If we were to go ahead and calculate this out, just a trick that I use, this is just, you can do it differently in your head, but I go bottom, go all the way up, and the two middles get multiplied together. Just works in my head. So at the top, we get 100 times 10 to the power 3 times 10 to the power 8. At the bottom, we get x times 2, I'll do x times 2 times 10 to the power 8. Here we can cancel 10 to the power 8, and we are left with 100 over 2, which is 50, and then times 10 to the power 3, so we would get 5 times 10 to the power 4 divided by x. So now moving back up, we have our missing variable. We have this equation that we'll set up now. So 8 over 1 plus 2 times 5 times 10 to the power 4 over x greater than equal to 1. From here, multiply both sides. So 8 is greater than equal to 1 plus, we'll multiply the 2 in, 10 times 10 to the power 4 over x. So therefore, we'll go up to here. We take the 1 out, so 7 greater than equal to 10 to the power 5. Just combining that over there over x. Therefore, 7x greater than equal to 10 to the power 5. Therefore, x greater, oops, greater than equal to 10 to the power 5 over 7. This gives us x greater than equal to 10 to the power 14,285.71 bits. And if we divide both sides by 8 to get our number, the number of bytes, which is what the question is asking. So x greater than equal to 1,785.71 bytes. And I have verified with multiple sources that the professor's solution on this specific question, if you have access to the solutions of this PDF, is invalid. So this is the correct answer. Is that clear to everyone? Any questions, any confusions? Okay, should be good. So we will move on to the next question. Now this is a MAC address tables question. So here in this question, we are given 6 stations, S1 through S6. They're connected in an extended LAN through switches B1 and B2, as shown in the figure below. Initially, the MAC address tables are empty. Suppose the following stations transmit frames, which are the following frames. We will write these out. So S2 goes to S1, then S5 goes to S4, S3 going to S5, S1 going to S2, and S6 going to S5. So we have these 5 um, transmissions that we have to validate and fill in our MAC address tables for B1 and B2 respectively. So if we zoom in on this question a little bit closer, we can see that between each of the two computers side by side, there is a solid black line, and we assume that this is a bus. So just to clarify what it means, that any packet that somehow lands on this bus gets broadcasted and sent to all available nodes that are connected to it. So a packet comes out from B1, will go into B2 and also, sorry, S2 and S1. So just to clarify that. Oops. Okay. So for the first packet, S2 sends a packet to S1. So we can see here S2, I'll use red. S2 sends a packet and it wants to get to S1 as its destination. But the packet gets sent out to B1 and also S1, but S2 doesn't know that. And it needs to follow the MAC address or the switching protocols to end up getting there, so the information is all cataloged. Um, so here, when this packet from S2 gets to B1, we know that B1's table is completely empty. Therefore, it will store the sender's information, so MAC address, let's call it S2, and this is on B1's port 1. So that sender's information is stored into the table. And from here, B1 will broadcast out to all of its ports. So it'll broadcast out to port 2, and it'll also broadcast out to its port 1. Port 2 will end up getting its information ends up getting to B2. So the packet that gets to B2 has information that its source MAC address is S2, and on B2 it's connected on its port 1. So now B2 also knows where S2 is. And since B2 doesn't have S1 in its eyesight, and S1 is here, what S1 will do is that S1 will say that, oh, I'm here, I will accept this packet, and that is that. It accepts it, and there is no response, there is no transmission beyond that. So that is for the first communication that happens between these two nodes. Okay, so next one, S5 communicating to S4, or it wants to get to S4. So same rule, S5 sends packet down in its branch, it ends up going there, it goes into B2. B2 doesn't know where S4 is, therefore broadcast out to all nodes, going out in all directions. And so S4 gets its packet, and B2 now knows where S5 is, which is on its port 2, And since the packet ended up getting onto this bus, we also know that B1 will have gotten this information through this communication port. S5 is on its port 2 as well. So port 2 is corresponded down there. Okay, any questions so far for this? I will take that as a no and move on to our third transmission. S3 transmitting to S5. So from here, S3 sends packet onto bus, it goes to B2 and also B1. So both of these, by direct connection, know exactly where S3 exists. S3 exists on B1's port 2, and S3 exists on B2's port 1. And once again, both of them will broadcast out, and the packet will get sent twice to to S5. Sorry. So S5 will end up getting its packet that it needs, and therefore that termination is also complete. Last but not least, sorry, we have two more. S1 going to S2. So this time when S1 transmits, it just needs to get to B1. Once it gets to B1, B1 already knows exactly where S2 is. Therefore, it sends it back onto the bus into S2. Is on, sorry, S, and then now it also knows that where S1 is. So S1 is located on its port 1. And last transmission, S6 to S5. S6 sends out the transmission. It wants to get to S5. B2 knows where S5 is, sends the response, and directly to S5. In this process, it also got to learn where S6 is. So therefore, it appends that onto its table, and this question is complete. Any clarifications needed or questions from anyone? Okay. Next question. This question is focusing on ARP tables, or ARP is known as Address Resolution Protocol. And as it's in the name, it resolutes addresses, and therefore it's called ARP. So what it's doing here is that it needs to know where everything is. If we zoom in, we know, and sorry, address resolution protocol is primarily used with routers because, as we know, IP addresses, and networking and routing does happen at layer 3, and switches are not capable of handling layer 3 protocols, at least not majority of them. So here we have here we're being asked to produce the routing table for router R3 given the network diagram below. So we have these, you can say, four ambiguous, as of now they are ambiguous to R3. R3 doesn't know exactly what that is. So it starts mapping everything out. The first thing that it will do is it will check on its interfaces with what is connected. So we'll start with interface 1. We know on interface 1 there is a network address that is 220.3.6.0/24. So now R3, the router, knows if anything needs to get sent to this address or this series of addresses, then I know to send it on interface 1. And here it's asking for next hop. That's the table that was drawn. And what next hop means is that how does it get there, right? So it gets there directly. So the question, I mean, in the solution it said DC, so direct connection. You can also just write direct. Either one is a valid answer, so they're directly connected. Okay, so for this second interface, we have another subnet. So we have 129.8.0.0/16. That's a slash. Okay. And once again, this is a direct link between the router and that network. And that is that. Um, Following, we have another subnet. So here, earlier I made a mistake. I did highlight these two IP addresses. That's not the purpose of an ARP table. ARP table is more for networks. So subnets or let's say supernets in this case, in any case, right? Any network IDs that it can communicate with. So um, in this case, we have this another network 134.18.0.0/16. Write that down. And here we can see that the only path that this network can take to get to the router R3 is with using its third interface. So we know it's a third interface. And now we need to know that for the router, what is the next hop that it needs to take in order to get to this network. Next hop is from its exporting port, which is 220.13.16.40, sorry. It will communicate to this address that is its hop, as I think of it. And its next hop is going to be 222.13.16.41. So it would be this address that we would put as the next hop the router has to take in order to get to this address. Um, and last but not least, when you're communicating to the rest of the internet, you make this hop, that's your first hop, but you want to make it out to the rest of this internet. We don't have IP addresses for the rest of these external IPs that may exist out there. Therefore, what we can do instead is write this universal ID that I showed earlier, which is the 0.0.0.0/0. This is also on port 3, and it also uses the same hop as the previous network did. So 222.13.16.41. And any extra IP address that it needs to communicate with, whether it be a DNS server, whether it be YouTube, Google, doesn't matter, will be using this, I guess you can say, list or this item on its ARP table. So all other routes that need to be made to the internet are happening through R3 with its hop being the ending in .41. I don't see any questions. Anything anyone wants to ask in voice or anywhere else? Okay. Someone is typing. So if you make the routing table for R1, that's what AlphaSync is asking, is that would be correct. Because as once again, any of these extra thick lines that you see, these are buses. And therefore this could also be placed up there. It would have the same effect. And its next hop would, so these would be directly connected as bus is assumed to be directly attached to any of the nodes that are there. So That would be right. That would be good. That would be okay to assume that R1 is directly connected to that IP address or that network. Okay, moving on. Okay, so consider an Ethernet subnet that just started up, and um, suppose a node with IP address what's listed wants to send a packet to the destination IP address. So destination, source, and another key information in this first sentence is that the subnet just started up, which means tables or everything like the subnet knows nothing. So it knows nothing about who is where or what is happening. It just started and it needs to send this source packet from source to destination. The node with IP 237.196.7.23 needs to know MAC address of the node 237 ending in 14. So here we have these two nodes of interest, one the source and destination, source on left, destination on the right. It sees. So the question is now asking, what is the destination address for the first Ethernet frame out on the subnet? So the first one that will be sent out, in this case, is going to be a broadcast, right? Because as of now, um, the source, so we'll call him S and D, source doesn't know anything about the network. And for it to kind of understand what's going on, where everything is, and for the router to even know what is where, so source can query the router to see what the MAC address is. What needs to be sent out is all Fs. So the MAC address for broadcasting is all Fs, also known as FF, FF, and then you would just keep going for all all six of the segments. Next bit that we have here is what is the destination address of the second Ethernet frame on the subnet. So here, once it sends out, so once this subnet or the router in this case sends out that broadcast, what happens is that every node will respond with like an acknowledgement to let them know what its IP address is, what port it's on, and some of its information that the router would need to communicate with it, to it and from it. So what information it gets out from this, from the second Ethernet frame, is going to be the MAC address of this, because once now the router knows what is where, now the source can figure out, or like now it knows, sorry, now destination will respond back with its MAC address and state that this is my MAC address, this is my IP address, and therefore that will be sent into the source that we have. So therefore, the destination that we have for this communication from destination to source, from D to S in this case, would be the MAC address of our source. I'm just going to write the first four characters, so 71.65-65. That would be the second Ethernet frame. And for the third one, now that source knows where destination is, what its MAC address is, because the frame that was sent to source included the information that destination sent over. So the destination address for the third Ethernet frame sent on the subnet will be the MAC address of the destination that source wants to send out to. So in this case, 58.23-23. Okay. That's it for this question. If anyone has any questions or doubts they want to know. Moving on. So this question, MTU fragmentation. So for those who may not know, MTU is the maximum transmission unit, and by default, devices will communicate with each other at 1500 MTUs or 1500 bytes. That's the MTU for devices communicating with one another. For devices communicating with a router, it's usually 500. For routers communicating, it's a little bit less, around 120, and it can differ between network to network. So this network is communicating at a much lower MTU than this network. So moving on to this question specifically, we are being asked to consider a total packet length, a total packet with a length 250 bytes. So here we have the 250 bytes includes the IPv4 header, and some information that we'll need to know is that this IPv4 header itself is worth 20 bytes with no options. That means that no other flags are on or off within the header itself, and an ID field equal to 17. That ID field isn't too important for this question specifically. Kind of there to confuse you maybe if you're not quite sure. So this packet is being sent from host A to host B, and it passes through routers X and Y. Assume that the subnet where host A is, it has an MTU of 500 bytes. Subnet where host is connected to B has an MTU of 80 bytes, and the subnet that connects the routers X and Y has an MTU of 120 bytes. Assuming that the don't fragment flag is not set, how many fragments does X divide the packet into? So X, here's what divide the packet into before transmitting out into Y. So first bit of business. The most important thing here that to be sure of is this statement. We have this 20 bytes of additional data that needs to be added to each of the fragmented bits or fragmented frames that are going to be sent out. So the first thing that we need to do is figure out what the actual size of your payload is. The payload will be 250 bytes minus 20 bytes, which is 230 bytes total. So that is the amount of information that we need to send from A onto B. The next little bit is going to be figuring out what the payload limit is between these two nodes. So payload limit between X and Y is going to be 120 minus 20 bytes. It's also bytes equals 100 bytes between these two. And from here, we can see that since 100 itself is not divisible by 8 evenly, what we will do is we will round down, or what's known as flooring. We will say we could do this too. We could do 100 divided by 8 and floor it, so round down, which equals 12.5, rounded down equals 12, and 8 times 12 is 96. So this is going to be the amount of information that we want to send out in each of the packets to optimize our bandwidth that we have. So from here, we are just going to do some quick little subtraction. So we have our total payload that we need to send over, 230 bytes. We have our planned transmission unit, which is 96 bytes. So 96 bytes, subtract that once, And we know that once will not be enough, and twice we'll try that. So minus 96 twice. We're left with a total of 38 bytes. And now we know this remainder is going to be our third byte. This will be our second. This will be our first. So therefore, there will be three packets sent, or I should rather say frames. Right. A packet is fine too. Okay. Three packets. The sizes are respectively 96 bytes, 96 bytes, and 38 bytes for each of those packets, and that will be our resultant. Okay. Next question. I think this is a crowd favorite for a sliding window, as it has the most amount of confusion laid alongside it. So, what is the sliding window question? And how do we answer it? So, sliding window, specifically here we're using the go back n example with a sample case that has a size 4 window, and it needs to send over 4 packets to its to the destination. It's just a random. This is just an overview of what it would look like. So when a packet needs to get sent, um, you keep sending in packets until you're within that single window that you are allowed to send in. And once you start receiving packets, the window itself will move down to show that you have acknowledged and you have received the acknowledgement of the previous packet being received. Moving on to the actual question that we'll be focusing on. Similar to what you saw in the previous slide, but this one is going to be showing you the window size still remaining at 4. However, you want to send 5 data packets until the acknowledgements for all of them have been received. So to solve this question, we know that we assume that no disruptions happen. So we can state that too. So assume no disruptions occur. So we know we can take that out of the question and just focus on what we need to show in the transmission. So we have here a frame that we want. This is just a sample of the sliding window that we want to send over to the destination. Once again, we'll call this source. We'll call this destination. Starting with packet 0, because that is what needs to be sent first. We have packet 0 lined up to transmit data over to destination. There is no disruptions. It sends the packet clearly. Here on the destination side, we get this P0 received. P0 has been received, and once it's received, it sends the acknowledgement that 0 has been received, and we can continue from here. So we'll show the acknowledgements going the other way. So that should be good. Enough space. And this is going this way. That's for P0. Now for P1, we have another bit of data that's being sent over. And I will do it in a better, faster way. I'm just going to take this, duplicate it. All this red. And we have the same kind of response from destination which is P1 has been received, and we will send the acknowledgement that 1 has been received. You do this 2 more times. So just change the color for all of them. Okay. So we have P2 that's been sent, received, and AC acknowledgement has also been sent back. Last but not least, we have P3 that's been sent and received. Acknowledgement has been sent back. And from here, we know that the first 4 packets within this frame have been sent. The reason why we were able to do all 4 of them at once is because we have 4, like they're all in the first window that we have. So we can say that this exact window can be referenced to for all 4 of these transmissions. After which, since since we have since we've sent all 4 of these, now we need to wait for the first acknowledgement before we can shift this window over one by one packet, or by one packet in this case. So once we receive this P0, like acknowledgement for P0 that we sent out, at this point, let me highlight this. At this point here, we are clear to continue on with the next packet. So this we can call like the times that we waited between these two. This is just like our waiting time. Wait for acknowledgement of 0 to come back. And once this has been arrived, we can go from here. And once again, I will just copy this and start it at the point of this arrival. And we send that packet from send that P4 packet. P4 is received, and now then we acknowledge that P4 acknowledgement that 4 has been received. So from here, at this point, that's what the window looks like. If we were to duplicate this a few more times to show you exactly what the rest of one more, what the rest of the frames or transmissions end up having an effect on the window. So once we have the following transmission that comes from acknowledgement for 1, we can shift this window over by one more value to see that we have only 3 digits now, and this would be a blank in this case. Moving on to our 4th. So from the previous one, we already have 2, 3, and 4 in the window, but since we got the acknowledgement for 2, we can clearly see that once it's confirmed that that it's been sent and it's been received, we can shift 2 out of the window as well. And then same thing with 3, once 3 is received. And last but not least, let me make this short, with 4, once 4 has also been received and cleared from this. So that would be what your, I guess, send and transmission would look like between these two for 5 packets with a window size of 4. Any questions?
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right, W's. So one more of these. This time we're gonna change the window size to 2 instead of 4. And what we're going to also do is that after the first transmission packet of P1, it gets lost. So we lose the first transmission of packet 1. So if we were to kind of replicate what we had from before, uh, we have this stream of data that needs to be sent over. So we have the 4 packets that need to be sent over. We start off with P0 to be sent over. So again, source, destination. P0 gets received. And acknowledgement of 0 has also been sent. And here is the reverse. So then we have P1. It also wants to send a packet over, but somewhere along the way it gets lost. So we drop that packet. The packet gets dropped. There's a collision. Something happens, and the receiver or the destination does not receive this. So therefore, we can say that P1 has not been received yet. And so therefore, as of now, the sender doesn't know that P1 has not been received because it only had gotten the information of P0. I mean, it's about to get that. It doesn't. It's gonna wait for some time before it figures out that P1 is lost. In the meantime, the sender still thinks that everything is going normal, and it starts the transmission for P2. So it starts the transmission. It ends up getting to the packet P2 gets to destination. So P2 is received, but then it's dropped. And the reason behind this is because the sequence has been broken as P0 was received, P1 was not received, and P2 was given. Therefore, something has gone wrong, and therefore P2 has been dropped as P1 not received. So since it wasn't received, it drops it. And at this point, if we look at our sliding window, we know that we received this packet of P, like this P0's acknowledgement ends up coming in. So at this point, we can confidently state that we have 0. We can push it out 0 can be pushed out the window as it's been verified and it's been sent. So before it moves on to P3, we need to make sure that we have P1's acknowledgement, and there's a timeout that it waits for, like it's programmed within the network or within the frames that are being sent over. It waits for this timeout period. So we can call this TO, timeout. And it waits for this time, and it still waits, and if it hasn't received any packets back within this time period, it will retransmit P1. So then we go back to P1 and we start from everything all over again. So we transmit P1 again, This time P1 is received, and ACK acknowledgement for P1 has been sent back. So that one we can say is confidently has been sent back. And while we're getting the acknowledgement, P2 is also sent again because here we know that the packet was dropped. So P2 must be sent again. P2 is received, and acknowledgement for 2 is sent back. And when we get this, when we get the acknowledgement for um, 1 back, we can once again update this sliding window to push 1 out of the window, and we can show. So we can start transmitting P3. So from here, P3 can be transmitted as soon as P1 arrives. There might be a slight delay, but it can be as soon as P1 arrives. P3 is received, and ACK3 is sent out. And that last bit of missing information that was left is going to be fulfilled. So from here, we have P2's acknowledgement. Therefore, the window gets rid of 2. Then we have P3's acknowledgement. Therefore, the window no longer needs to be on any of the frames. All packets have been successfully transmitted from source to destination, and that is this packet loss question. Are there any questions? Okay. Angela, you had something to say?
It's not for this question, so if no one has a question for this, can I ask something about the previous question?
This one?
No, I didn't get the chance to ask earlier. It was something with question 13. Something way back. Sorry.
This one?
Yeah, this one. I'm just confused here, right? You see how you have that big arrow? Like what's the conversions here? Sorry, not that big arrow, like the x over 8 and then like how you get those bits, the right side, rightmost side.
This one?
Yeah. Can you just explain how like you got to here?
Okay, so as of like based on the information within the question, if I were to put the units for these, right? So we have this is kilometers, 10 this is kilometers. Then we have here this is going to be kilometers per second. So this is meters. Sorry, not kilometers. Meters. This is meters. I'll use a different color. This is meters. This is meters per second. X is going to be whatever this unit at the bottom is. So the unit for the bottom here we have megabits per second. So bits per second is the unit for X. Therefore, since this is bits, this has to be bits to be able to cancel everything out. And therefore, since we don't convert to bytes yet, therefore we will get our final value of X when we solve it. It has to be greater than this number of bits, of 14,285 bits. And to convert into bytes, you divide both sides by 8 to get bytes as your answer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. All right. So, this last question is on CSMACA. I'm gonna be true with you guys. I understand it, but if you were to ask me any like real questions, I might not be able to answer it. Um, I have not had enough practice with it yet, so the only question for CSMACA that I will be going through myself will be this one. I have put the other question for the actual like drawing of the whole series out, but as the professor said that we won't be having to draw anything for CSMACA, I have not included it um, within the study hall. So, in just as an example to cover some theory for what could be asked of us from CSMACA, I've included this exposed terminal or hidden terminal question that we have. So just to also kind of define what the difference between an exposed and a hidden terminal is whatever, let's say you're looking at E, for example, right? Whatever terminals E can visually see within its circle, in this case it's only B. So if we were to zoom in, it's only B in this case. Um, that would be considered an exposed terminal that it has, or that it can see. It can see what's going on. Same with B, if you look at this big circle in the middle, A, C, and E are exposed terminals. But if you are looking at this transmission between D and um, C, for example, you can see that there could be interferences from, let's say, E transmitting, there could be something from B transmitting, or there could be something from, sorry, only these two, B and E, that transmit and could interfere, or it could come in the way of the packet receiving C. So that could cause a collision, it could cause packet drop, or because of lots of um, traffic on that frequency, that could also result in delays that could occur. So the question is asking, identify the hidden and exposed terminals if D transmits to C, and then if C transmits to D. So these are two separate questions. So for part one, so D going to C, we can see that there is a terminal of of B and E coming into the circle. So therefore, some hidden hidden T, I'll just call them T's, could be B or E, and then the exposed terminals in this case are going to be C and F, because that's what it can see and that's what it would end up transmitting. That's what it could end up transmitting to. For part two, C transmitting to D, we have some other hidden terminals that we see. So now we don't look at this. We want to transmit from C to D. We can see that F is just outside of this region, and in a way, so is E, and so is A. But realistically, we can kind of determine based on the transmission of B that if there's anything else going on here, we would kind of have an idea of what's going on. Uh, as of now, the hidden terminals will continue on with this. So hidden terminals for C, when it's communicating, it doesn't know what's going to happen with F. F is like a wild card. We don't know its range. We just know that it could transmit at any point, and that's our our mode, or that one bit of error that we could have. And as for exposed terminals, of course, we have B, since it's within range. So we have B, and we can also have D, that's who we're transmitting to. So for this question, it was pretty short. This could be multiple choice. It could be short answer, like explain why terminal C can transmit to D, but what interruptions could occur, some things like that. The professor could switch it up however they wish. So we have these as our answers for hidden and exposed terminals. So, yep. Um, as of now, this is everything that I had prepared for this. I had not gotten enough time to prepare for this drawing, for drawing the timeline of this question. But if you guys have any questions from the study hall that we've gone through right now, or if there's any other questions outside of this or outside of any questions that I've covered, or anything you may have or you have doubts about, I'm here. I'll be here till about 9. If you guys want to like clear any doubts or anything like that. But yeah,
That's
that's
good.
pretty much it
Thanks, Krish.
for my part. Yeah, no problem.
Does anyone know what the average for this course is usually for the final?
No idea.
I just want to pass, man.
I heard the prof said there might be a curve for the exam. I don't know if that's true, but I don't know. I heard someone say that.
I need that badly. I think we all need that badly.
Yeah, bro, we
For
do.
real. For real.
I'm living and dying by that shit.
Yeah. Oh, Krish, there's a question.
I saw in chat. I was about to answer that
Okay.
right now.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so the difference between hidden and exposed is whether or not, like, let's say, imagine put like, oops, sorry, imagine put, brother, my bad. Imagine you put yourself in the shoes of D. Basically, any of the nodes that you can physically see, like you can see that they're there, are going to be your exposed terminals that you can freely communicate with. Um, and something that is a hidden terminal, I mean, I'll just read you the definition as well so it's more clear. A node that could be transmitting to a destination node while being invisible to the source. So, being D here, you don't know whether B over there is transmitting something at the same time as you want to transmit something to C. So if B transmits to C and you transmit to C at the same time, that's too pathetic. So if B transmits to C and you transmit to C at the same time, there will be a collision and C will end up dropping one, both, or neither of the packets. So that could cause more confusion. So therefore, in the case of hidden terminals, there could be higher chances of retransmitting these packets between nodes. Hopefully that helps. Oh, well, actually, the other ones as well. So like A and E are also hidden. I just put B as an example. Um, so Alpha saying yeah. So like as I said, to B only whatever's within this region is what's exposed to it. It can transmit to them. It can see what they're doing. It can kind of make sure that if they're transmitting anything, that D will not transmit at the same time. And then there are some terms that I can quickly go through. There is something called RTS, CTS. So what these are is that let's say if D wants to transmit something within its area, it's going to send an RTS, which is known as a request to send. And if all other nodes are okay with that, right, if no one else is about to send something, so then D will then transmit a CTS, or the other nodes will send a CTS stating that it's clear to send, and therefore D will be allowed to transmit. Yeah. So hopefully that helps with CSMACA. Yeah. If there's any more questions, as I said, I will be around here for about 20 more minutes. And unless everyone else leaves, then we are good to go.
Appreciate you, Chris. Have a good one, bro.
Of course, man. Yeah. Take care. Have a good night.
Oh, also, where is this gonna be posted? If
In this chat, I'll send it here, and I'll post a YouTube link of the recording in like maybe whenever it's done uploading.
beautiful. Thank you so much, Chris.
Yeah, no worries.
Have a good one, man. Good night.
Good night. Yeah, I'll stop the recording here since mostly everyone else is gone.